Hi, I'm Shelley.
And I'm Kate, and you're listening to One Lump or Two,
The boldest breast cancer podcast yet.
Join us each week as we offer an intimate glimpse into the challenges and triumphs of facing breast cancer head-on in our 30s.
In Series 2, we're going to be joined by you, our listeners, and some experts in the field to help us all feel a little less alone and a lot more informed.
Now, let's pull back that curtain and dive in. Hello.
Hello.
Today we are at Against Breast Cancer, which is a charity in Abingdon. So we are joined by Mark and Rob today. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your job roles, what you do?
Hi, my name's Rob. I'm the head of development. I've been here for about 15 years. I started as a volunteer, and what I do these days is I look after some of the mailings we do to supporters. I look after the website and the digital side of things a little. And I also am involved in trying to find source funds from trusts, foundations, and looking after things like legacies. So that's money that's been left in wills to charities, stuff that I can apply for or apply to be considered for. And that's really my role. So it's a small charity. We all have to wear a lot of hats.
What about you, Mark? What is it you do?
So I've only been here a relatively short time. I joined in September as some sort of initially as a temporary role, and then that's moved into my current role, which is the research manager. So I'm a scientist by background, so I've studied immunology and cancer research most of my career, including working recently for smaller companies that are developing cancer therapeutics.
That's interesting.
So this is a different avenue for me, but it's been fantastic. So my role has been to oversee the research. We're required by the Association of Medical Research Charities to have a research plan. So any charity that funds research, it's a requirement that that is carefully considered and the money is being spent to fund the best research possible. So the charity has a research roadmap, which is a very big document, over 60 pages and 30,000 words.
Wow.
And that has to be reviewed and updated every 2 years. So that was one job I did. So that took quite a lot of time.
Yeah.
Feels like you'd finish it and then just have to start again.
Immediately.
It is a bit like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, so overseeing the fantastic research, liaising with our researchers and students that charity funds or partly funds, and a whole number of other diverse roles that we might touch on later, responding to queries that could be anything from patients to patient support groups. And recently we're right in the midst of setting up the first Against Breast Cancer Research Conference. So we're bringing together all our researchers, supporters, volunteers, students to talk about the research and a great showpiece for all the great research that the charity funds.
Yeah, we've seen the agenda. It looks...
Yeah, it does look very
we're
interesting.
a bit upset that we can't make it because work.
But am I right in thinking that Against Breast Cancer solely focuses on stage 4 breast cancer research?
Yes, so the research is focused at preventing loss of life by secondary breast cancer.
Yes.
The late spread metastatic form, or stage 4. Of course, some of the research will not be completely separated from and be applicable to primary breast cancer as well, which is obviously great. But yeah, the primary role is the 3 strands of preventing loss of life by secondary breast cancer by prevention, diet and lifestyle component, then early detection, which is vitally important, and improved therapies. Great advances are being made, but there's work to be done.
There's definitely still like huge unknowns because when I was diagnosed, I was 30, so it was probably like the fittest and healthiest I'd ever been in my life. Like in the years running up to, I'd really hit that kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to turn 30 and I must look after myself and all that kind of stuff. Exercising really well, eating really well, and then breast cancer on the huge list of risk factors that they tick you off against when you're diagnosed. The only one I had a tick next to, theoretically, was a history of cancer, not specifically breast, but cancers in my family. So I've always found the whole diet and lifestyle thing, personally for me, really hard to get my head around because
you could do everything right and still...
theoretically I was doing everything right and still something went horrendously wrong.
When the charity was established in the early 1990s by Dr. Leatham, He started out his professional career as a pathologist, and it was because he had seen far too many youngish women arrive in the mortuary that he decided to stop what he was doing, and he said, I'm not happy with this. I want to stop being a pathologist. I want to move my specialism into research, particularly into breast cancer, and that's where the charity came from. So right from the start, we focused on the wider aspects. So it took us a holistic approach, you might call it, and so diet and lifestyle is something that's always been of a central approach of the charity is taken. And what we did is we undertook a clinical trial back in the 1990s, and when I arrived at the charity, that was pretty much the recruitment stage was coming to an end, and I can't believe the charity, this tiny charity in Abingdon, would have done it. I think if someone had told them that the cost that we're going to be involved, they would have said no chance. But it took about 16 years to recruit 3,000 ladies, all 1 year post their diagnosis.
Right.
And with the help of, I think it was about 56 hospitals around the UK, all said, yes, we'll use, you can use us as recruitment centres. And Macmillan nurses in those hospitals said, right, what we'll do is we'll try and identify patients and see if they're interested in joining. It took 16 years to get about 3,000, and each of those ladies had to sign up for about 5 years.
Right, okay.
And that meant that once a year they would come in, they'd have their blood taken, there'd be a urine sample taken, and lots and lots of questionnaires and data collected. So what we tried to do was get a nationwide picture of whether diet and lifestyle has an impact at all on breast cancer recurrence.
And so what is the guidance, I guess, as to diet and lifestyle? Kind of what would your advice be after this research?
I think everything that we know is out there at the moment. We found some, we found during the research, speaking to one of the scientists involved when we started in the early 1990s, everything had been set up the way they thought it was right. But as the years passed, they started seeing that more and more women were taking supplements. So we had to find out, the researchers had to find out what was in all these supplements. Right. So people's habits were certainly changing. In terms of the results, well, we don't know yet. There's just so much information out there. So the information we have is the best we've got at the moment.
Eat healthy, exercise.
Yeah. Cut back on alcohol.
We try really hard to stay active, don't we? I definitely
easier
work
said
hard.
than done sometimes.
My diet's not quite as good, but equally it's really hard. And it's like much harder on the other side of it as well, because I'm now on all these medications that are affecting my body in horrible ways, and they make it harder to like make the right choice. And even if that right choice is walking somewhere rather than driving, because it's the energy payoff sometimes. So I just always find it so funny to some extent that it is such diet and lifestyle is such an important integral part of it, and it completely is, I agree. But then you, on the other side of it, find yourself in a situation where it's so hard to input those back into your life almost, because certainly when I was in treatment, and I know you the same, you just move into I'll eat whatever I can reach because I don't have to move and I don't have to
the
think
energy
and all that kind of stuff, and then you come back out and you're piecing your life back together, and then you're like, I should probably choose the fruit over
a cake.
Yeah, I mean, Rob did a brilliant summary there of the what we call the biobank of all these samples that people put into the questionnaires, and some fabulous research has come out of that. And yeah, the evidence is really overall strong that good diet and healthy lifestyle, soya-based products do seem to be have a beneficial effect. There has been some mixed.
See, actually, I find that very interesting because I've had very conflicting advice because I'm vegan. I love to tell people I'm vegan. And I was actually told by someone who wasn't a doctor, but she'd been told by a doctor never to eat tofu ever again because it's such a high soy content, and then soy has like estrogen in it. And so then you shouldn't eat too much soy because then the estrogen can give you increased risk of your breast cancer recurrence. So there's a lot of like misinformation out there. I wonder if you could maybe kind of bust a myth for me, or
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So soya, the phytoestrogens that are in soya and products like tofu are chemically similar to estrogens. Some of the studies have had a few mixed reports, like you say, but I think that the consensus now is that because they're similar but not as strong as estrogen, they act as decoys.
Right.
So they're actually dampening the effect of estrogen that could be driving breast cancer
Interesting.
cell growth.
Okay.
I guess caution with anything, people, too much of anything is a problem, but I think if people enjoy soy and tofu, I'm not a medical doctor, but I think the research would support that there's no need to be particularly concerned to avoid it at all costs, and it's probably, most studies now would say it's a beneficial effect.
Okay, good to know.
New diet unlocked.
And actually, this is of no help simply to you guys being young and say you have done all the right things, but sometimes the genes can override those things. But overall, the role of obesity in breast cancer does seem to be quite strong now, particularly in sort of post-menopausal women. Our researchers at Southampton are doing some really nice research, basically digging deeper into that and finding the biology behind that and why obesity is linked to.
And what would we consider obese? Because I think you conjure up this image in your head of like obese means extremely large and very fat. But also if you then looked at like BMI information, technically I'm overweight.
Me too.
Yeah, so like what constitutes...
Well, it's a quite a subjective thing.
Okay.
Studies tend to look at BMI above and below 25. I've seen.
So I'm above 25. I'm 27 technically, and
I have no idea what I
I'm not
am.
obese.
No.
So what kinds of things are you funding research into at the moment?
The one I get particularly excited about is, the researchers are people. That's the most important thing. And we've got to remember that, like everything else, we need great doctors, great researchers, great scientists. And because we come from, we were born out of a university, we tried to carry that through. That where possible, we'll try and develop and support young early careers researchers as they make their way. And now so many of them are performing some brilliant, really innovative research. One of the colleges, particularly in Oxford University, which is just so happens to be, that's our local university, it's around the corner. What we do is we run a junior research fellowship at the university. So we don't have a say in who's recruited. That's all handed over to a board appointed by the university. And what they've done is they've invited applications as and when we've got funding available. They'll identify suitable candidates, and what we'll do is we'll fund them for 3 years. And that's basically taking away a lot of their worries, that they can just concentrate on their work and actually becoming better scientists and ingratiating themselves into if that's the right word, I'm not sure, into the local network. And what we found is that our researchers, our previous ones, have gone on to fantastic positions and have gained real prominence. Some others locally. The latest one we're really excited about. She's been invited to go and talk in America already. This is very early days, and it's wonderful seeing that sort of thing happening, because you can see these people's careers taking shape. If you'd come in, say, 10 years ago, a lot of the approaches that are taken and the equipment and the tools available just didn't exist a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess now with things like artificial intelligence and stuff like that, you've got to have fresh thinking all the time, and these people coming in with these new approaches. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And if we bring them all together, then we're big on collaboration wherever possible. But the scientists know that they're not fools. They want answers. They are naturally curious people.
Yeah.
They're fantastic.
You can't make progress happen in isolation.
No. That's the part of the research I really like. Long-term projects is what we're really into wherever possible. So at the University of Southampton, we've got a couple there. One's a 5-year project and another an 11-year project. And again, that's development of new therapies and new approaches. So, Mark can tell you a little bit more about those. But again, it's really exciting to see that, because what they'll do is they'll give us, to the non-scientists, these maps, these milestones that by this date we hope to be finding that and this and that, and they're putting it in such a way that we can understand. And if I can get my head around it, then I've got a fighting chance of getting someone else to hopefully support it too. But it's really about the people, and once you get to meet the people and you find out what drives them, then I think that's really what motivates me to give them all the support we can and find out where they want to go, and anything we can do to help them get there is wonderful, because we all want to be in the same place, right?
Well, yeah, exactly, 100%. And how do you kind of approach getting kind of people on board to fundraise and to do you have kind of like ways to approach like donors? Like, I don't know, how does that kind of side of the charity work?
As a smaller organisation, there's only a few of us doing it as fundraisers, and what we'll try and do is we'll listen. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio, and you're going to learn about what people are coming to you for, what they want to learn from you, and what they're interested in supporting. You won't find Against Breast Cancer doing a big television campaign or a national mailing or anything like that, because we just don't have the funds available. People do find us online, and so the website's pretty good, and it gives the people a chance to say, well, what do we want to do? So we're very interested in finding out, what motivates you as someone who wants to come to the charity. So that might be, look, I want to download a leaflet. That's fine. Great, do that. I want to sign up for an event. Now, that could be something on the other side of the world, or it could be your local 5K. It really doesn't matter. What we'll try and do is we'll try and make sure that we're there to support you. Now, your motivations are your own, and what we try and do on the website is something that's really, really popular. Is we talk to supporters and ask them, would you like to share your story? And
I am one of them.
It gets a lot of traffic. There's a lot of demand for it. So I would commend that to anybody and say, do it, because one thing I've learned reading them, and in the past I've written a few of them, it's no two stories are the same. Yeah. And you just I've never quite sort of squared that circle. It's it could be you're younger, could be older. People could be the same age in the same town, but their experiences are so unique, so different. A lot of them don't have a good outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I found you guys just by Google. I can't remember exactly what I searched, but I came across the stories part of your website. I spent ages in there just reading other people's stories and not feeling alone anymore. And that's another reason why we're doing what we're doing here. It's so that people don't feel alone, because going through treatment, whether it's for primary or secondary, the whole thing is isolating. It's horrendous and it's horrible. Unique to a handful of people who will have gone through this over the pandemic years, it's even more isolating because we didn't have people sat next to us at our appointments. We were having to go into those rooms alone, and I remember just sitting down one day and just so incredibly lonely, and there is no one that understands me and what I'm going through, even though I know there are people that understand and what I'm going through. And I found that part of your website, poured through, and then thought, well, if this has helped me, then it's only fair that I put my story back into that, because then that can live on your website, and that can hopefully help someone else who comes after me.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because it's the quick story, I'm going to go off piece a little here. It's about 4 weeks ago when I think you contacted the charity, and my colleague came to me and said, Robert, there's 2 guys coming in, they do a podcast called One Lump or Two, here's the poster. Can you be on it? Yeah, of course I can. It'd be my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me, by the way. And it was about 4 hours after that, I was looking at that poster again, but this time I was in the Churchill Hospital in Oxford, in the breast care ward with my mum. Since then, those last 4 weeks, I've been through, as her carer, I suppose, trying to make sure she's at appointments with her GP, with the doctor, helping with the letters and the medication and everything like that. So it's been quite a learning experience for me, and despite knowing a fair bit, well, more than the average person, I would say, about breast cancer in the UK today, what I've done is I found myself being, okay, how do you explain to a woman who's 87, she has trouble with short-term memory, so I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell her, yes, Mum, you have got breast cancer, and see the look in her face when she gets it.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
And I wish there was something I could do about that. But then if that's my story, is that something I'm now thinking, like you, should I be saying to the charity, should I be publishing this story in my experience?
We think from our point of view that the way it touches everybody is so different, and I can only speak from my experience. So my partner, I thought he was completely fine through it all. Like the way he presented to me most of the time, because he was being strong for me, was that this is fine. He's holding his stuff together. And it was only when we were sat talking to a friend of mine who then got diagnosed that he turned to her partner and said, I don't think I've ever felt this useless in my life, because there's nothing he could do to take away my experience, what I was feeling. All he could do was come home from work every day and be there. As soon as he communicated that, I suddenly felt like I was then able to support him better as well. So I think the stories that of people who are being affected by it because they're holding a loved one's hand through it are just as helpful, because there are an equal number of people with mums and dads and children and partners out there who aren't directly experiencing themselves, but they're walking that road with you, and their experience is so different to your experience as the person being treated.
It's such a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it really shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I just think we should be talking about it in any way. It isn't just about the person experiencing it. I think, like, not long after I'd been diagnosed, I think I posted something on social media that just said, like, cancer doesn't just touch me, it's engulfing my entire family, and in ways that I will never, ever know. And any communication about it is the right thing to be doing, I think.
It sounds corny to say, but if it helps just one person.
Yeah.
That's exactly kind of what we say with the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
we literally kind of started and we were like, if it just helps one person, we'll consider it a win. And I think it's important to say as well, like, there's no kind of right or wrong way to deal with it or to say something. And, it's not a case of like, this is what you should be doing, you should be sharing your story in this way. It's whatever people feel comfortable with doing as well. And, hopefully by like us doing this and you chatting to us and, people who have shared their stories, other people will feel more comfortable to talk about, because it's the more we talk about it, the more people will kind of want to fund it, and then this is when like the research grows and it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? And
it becomes less scary as well.
Yeah.
For everyone, because like you said, even though you know more than your average person, you're now travelling that road, and there's so much that you don't know, and there's still so much that we don't know, even though we.
For sure. I mean, I was just shocked when the doctor said to my mum, "Well, you've had breast cancer," and blimey, okay, where do we go from here? And there it is. And she had a little, her arm, her hand was on my arm, and I just felt it. Little lady just went cold. Yeah. And I thought that must be how it's feeling for her. She's terrified. Yeah. It must be like that for everyone. I'm sure it's probably like that for you.
Yeah, I think it is. The whole thing is terrifying, and that it doesn't matter like how much people talk about it or all the research we do. Like, it's never not going to be terrifying to some extent, because there's this huge association with cancer equaling death, and although that is less the case now than it has been, there's still an awful lot of death around it that there shouldn't be. And whether that's because we can improve the way we detect and earlier detection, and we can prevent people from dying and things like that, like it's such a big life overhauling thing. It's not necessarily the cancer that is the terrifying part. Sometimes it's the upheaval of everything else that comes with it. And I remember, you've talked about it quite a few times on the podcast, how I gave Shane an out as soon as I was diagnosed, and I said, if you don't want to do this with me because it's going to be hard, then cool, like now's the time to go scot-free, I won't hate you, whatever. And even though I knew this was going to be tough, like I'd just been talked through what I just signed the consent forms for at the hospital, I still don't think I realised how tough it was actually going to be in like all the tiny aspects of your life, in terms of like, oh well, I've run out of milk and I don't have any energy to go and get milk, so I'm just going to sit home and not have a cup of tea until somebody else can go and get the milk. And like, it's just stupid things like that you wouldn't associate, like, I'm going to be so tired, not even going to be motivated to get milk for the one cup of tea I want all day.
It's those little things that have such a great impact.
Yeah.
I was chatting to someone close yesterday, and she got her letter through from the hospital to say she'd had a 6-month scan following radiotherapy, and she was clear. And I said, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I knew you would be, and I just felt it. But she said, look, Rob, the letter was written 8 days ago, and that's how long it took to arrive in the post. Why couldn't they email it? Why, you know, it just, those 8 days, and it's the anxiety levels and everything like that. Like, it's completely understandable. It's just so tiny little things, isn't it? And you think, well, if you could just do that and put yourself in someone else's shoes.
You know, it's super important that we fund stuff like this so that people have like hope or something to kind of, you know, grab onto as this like life-saving
And the
thing.
potential for multiple different options in terms of the treatment you're given as well, because surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, within those there's all these various different parts. Like, we had the same IV chemotherapy, Shelley's had additional chemotherapy in tablet forms as well, and like they all do like completely different things. So even though you could have the same regimen as someone, like, everybody is going to react completely differently. And I think sometimes it's understanding why people are reacting differently. We had the same chemotherapy drugs, but when we sat down and compared our physical reactions to those drugs, completely different, certainly for the second one, the paclitaxel. I just think like the more research that is done into, you know, the therapies side of it, and you mentioned you're looking at things like that, the better, because you have this better understanding of how you're affecting somebody's life and somebody's quality of life. And if that quality of life is already impacted by the fact that they've got secondary breast cancer and that isn't going anywhere, their quality of life piece becomes so much more important, because nobody wants to live the rest of their lives out miserably.
So is there like a piece of research that you're working on at the moment that you're like particularly like excited about, or?
Well, there's so much I could talk about. One thing you touched on, Kate, about early detection. I think it goes without saying that early detection is vitally important. And if breast cancer is detected in stage 1 or 2, the survival rates beyond sort of 5-10 years are sort of 90+%. So a lot better than if it's detected later, of course. So we've got some research that we fund at the University of Southampton that's looking at it's an early multiple cancer detection test called MyOnco. That's from onco, from oncology, and the my comes from micro, because it looks in small amount of blood. It can be a pinprick of blood.
Wow.
It looks for small gene fragments called microRNAs that are shed into the blood, and that they look at 50 different things. They're tiny little gene fragments, and they look at up to 50 different types. And they've used AI or machine learning, crunching databases of lots of different people and their genes to basically allow early detection. So multiple different cancers, up to 12 of the most common cancers. Vitally, it looks extremely promising for detecting stage 1 and stage 2 cancers.
Wow.
Much better rate than existing tests.
Because they say that I could have had cancer present in my body for up to 5 years before my lump was a lump big enough to be foul. So would something like that test to be able to pick it up for that point that I've gone, oh, there's something here?
Yeah, absolutely. Some sort of similar tests that are very complicated and very personalised have shown that, where it would follow somebody that's had a primary cancer and then track it over time. And there's been some tests that have shown with up to 2 years advance notice, if you will, before it would be seen clinically, to detect that recurrence coming up by just these little signals in the blood.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
So theoretically, those things have happened, but they're so laborious that they're not very easily off the shelf, applicable to lots of people
Right.
simply and quickly. But where this Marmco test has the value is that the aim of the Southampton team is to make it as cost effective, roll it out to as many people as possible. Initially, it'd be to people at high risk of either primary cancer or recurrence. But relatively low cost, a couple of £100, which is far, far cheaper than some of the tests that are available, particularly in the US, that's sort of £1,000 a test, which obviously makes it difficult to roll out to lots and lots of people.
And it's not just breast cancer it's detecting, is it?
Yeah, up to 12 of different cancers at the moment, and I think they're looking to expand that to...
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And who theoretically would be eligible for a test like that, or is the thought behind it kind of to have it as like a screening process for like the majority of the population, or would it be like a specific, obviously you mentioned high risk patients, but I guess, you know, I'm talking kind of way in the future, is this kind of going to be offered to everybody, or would it still just be a specific type of person?
Well, I guess those plans still working in progress, but yeah, you would start with the high risk groups, but if it keeps showing the promise, then you could just expand to a wider and wider number of people. Anybody with a family history, perhaps, if we're applying it to breast cancer, at a much earlier stage than, say, screening would happen now. As you're painfully aware, that whilst breast cancer rates and survival rates are much, much better, there does seem to be a trend of more young people being affected.
Yeah, it's actually gone up recently from 2,300 a year to 2,500 a year now. People under 39 who are diagnosed with breast cancer. So it's still, you know, a small, I think it's like 4 to 5% of breast cancer cases are under 39, but it is growing and growing and growing, which is kind of scary to think about, considering obviously you only really get offered screening when you hit 50, and I understand the reasons behind that. Obviously mammograms are not good on young, dense breast tissues. Also, your risk increases when you're at 50 years old. But if something like this test can come in, that's an absolute game changer.
Yeah, because things like we've both got siblings. So my sister, certainly, because of the history of cancers in our family, we have been brought up very aware of our risks, and that's how I caught mine so early, because we were taught to check and stuff. I've now had a primary diagnosis. My sister is therefore technically at a potential higher risk. Currently, my mother is the only female member of our family not to have had cancer in quite a few generations, so she's great.
Good for her.
Good for her. Well done, Mum. So my sister has been offered mammogram testing now from the age of 40, so her screening age has been brought forward because of her link to me, obviously, and I've got no found genetic link. But even like a test like that, like just a simple prick of blood would be way less like anxiety inducing for someone like my sister, who already now has an awful lot of anxiety around the whole thing, having watched me go through it.
And what's really important about the test is not only catching it early, is its sensitivity and specificity, technical terms, are very good, which basically means your level of false positives are very low, and false negatives are low as well, because some of the tests, as you may know, like prostate-specific antigen for prostate, it can be a flag, but it's not great. There's a lot of false positives. It can be caused by other things, so you don't want to give people anxiety unnecessarily to say, oh, we've got a cancer signal here, we need to do follow-up tests. But if you've got a 95 to 99% detection rate, then that's accurate, then that's amazing. So.
Mark, is all that a scientist's way of saying it's accurate?
Absolutely,
I think that's amazing. It sounds amazing. And
It sounds incredibly promising, and the fact that it can detect 12 different types of cancer, and obviously, you know, breast cancer is one of them, and prostate, I assume, is one of them. Is there, what other ones can it kind of...
I should know the list. It's ovarian, colorectal, head and neck. But I think the way it's going, it will soon cover, you know, even more than 12. That covers a lot of the main threats. And obviously most of those don't have any kind of screening test currently available.
Yeah.
And the ones that do, which is only 3, breast cancer, prostate and colorectal, they're not great.
Yeah.
There are other tests out there. There's a lot of research into these areas, but they will have the pros and cons, and say some are very expensive or very custom. It has a lot of potential.
I'm not a scientist, and it makes me excited, and I hate science.
Really, I love science. I did all the science
I'm an
GCSEs
English
and A
language
levels.
person.
It is super exciting, and you know, it's exciting for everybody. But I think especially like because we've gone through it, it's so nice to kind of hear positive research being done, and you know, someone like yourselves being genuinely excited about this prospect. And you mentioned AI being a part of it, and I think AI is obviously quite big at the moment. It does a lot of things. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But how big do you think AI could be in terms of cancer research?
Well, here with this test, it's really important. I know Rob's. This is a topic you're interested in, so why don't you?
This is way above my head, but what we've seen is some of the guys at Southampton applying these new tools and getting fantastic results, and sometimes not knowing why they're getting them. So there's a it's just, I don't know, a fledgling, it seems, branch of science that just how helpful machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to be. So I'm no expert, but what I would say is the guys who are going to be talking about it are at our research conference. Now we're doing that in Oxford in June, aren't we? At Oriel College. Now certainly get you a link, tune in, because we're going to live stream it because we want as many people as possible to see it.
Yeah.
And then you'll find out, you get it from the horse's mouth. It'll be sort of short, like 15-minute presentations, something like that. It's going to be in plain English.
Yeah.
So we give as many people as possible just a chance to learn, get it straight from the horse's mouth. And to see this is what's happening in the labs, where are things going, and does that have any bearing on me or someone I love? Then if it gives you a little bit more, calm, peace, less anxiety, then that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and I think as well, because like you said it there, like in plain English, and does this affect me or someone I love? And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. And there is a lot of scientific jargon out there. Maybe we would understand only because we've gone through breast cancer.
I've googled a lot of words.
Yeah, you do have to Google a lot of words. So I think it is really, really important to try and break this stuff down into kind of bite-sized things that people are going to understand. And the more people can relate to it, the more people are going to kind of want to get involved, I guess.
I mean, I think as well, when you listen to these guys directly, it's kind of like their enthusiasm and their passion for the subject is infectious. And there's so much they want to do, and purely because of funds, there's only so much they can do.
Yeah.
So all the support we can get, the better. I mean, because we can support some absolutely fantastic research that's been done in the UK, in the north, the south, the east. Wherever they are, we'll try and support. But there's only so much we can do, and that's the limit of fundraising, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you're such a small charity, really. Like the number of people that work here is quite small. I mean, we're obviously we're sat in the office now, and it is it's not a big building, and the fact that you can reach, you said like you reach people in the north and in the south, and that's incredible that like a little charity in Abingdon has made such a big impact. And it's so nice to be able to come here and talk to you guys and have you talk so passionately about it as well.
Well, they find us, and we'll do as much as we can. So have you seen our recycling schemes?
I have, yeah.
Have that got picked up by Lorraine Kelly's programs a few years ago? That was wonderful, because that really helped spread the message of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. And we've got about probably best part of 700-800 of those banks around the UK in stores, from small places like lingerie boutiques, or where ladies can go and get a bra fitted properly. And once they've had that done, they never want to go back to the old one. So we provide a bra bank. Those are all collected and sold, and we use those bras that are collected to raise money for our research. So however we can however we can do it, we will. It's just another way that if we can use it to turn your old bras or whatever into funds, we'll certainly have a go at it. If it can be done, we'll do it. We're a small charity. I think you've seen about 5 people here today.
Yeah.
And that's a busy day for us, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, I didn't know like a year ago, as a scientist who's still working in the lab, I'd be a few months later helping put 180 bags of bras into the back of a truck.
Obviously, you guys have been here very different lengths of time. So you started as a volunteer, and like, what were you doing as a volunteer, and what kind of made you want to like stay? And
well, it was a fantastic time in my life.
Yeah.
I had a very young family. I got made redundant, and I thought, oh dear, what am I going to do? And while I figure out what next, I thought I'd do some volunteering. And when I walked through the doors, it's, what experience do you have? And I told them I had experience. I had a career of 25 years in the printing industry. So, and it was, Rob, can you help with this? We're trying to do a newsletter, and we don't quite know how to put it together. And I thought, what experience have I possibly got that would help a charity? And as it turns out, an awful lot. And this is what we continue to find, that there are people out there who, like me, but just by happy coincidence, that I found out that I had an awful lot to offer the charity. Well, they saw it way before I did, let's be honest. And it was just those experiences that you can bring in, and it's not fresh thinking, it's because you've got experiences from a different industry, a different background, and you can see how things are going. When I arrived, I'll be the first to admit, I arrived with analogue skills. They're all digital now. So it's been a really exciting time to be part of a small organisation like this. So, anybody who's listening, and if they've been thinking about volunteering, I would say, my personal experience was it was life changing. It was absolutely fantastic, and I would recommend it to anybody. And you get to meet the most amazing people, and if they're prepared to basically go out and do the fundraising, give up their time, their weekends, and everything to take part in these events, the very least I can do is go along and say, right, would you like a cup of tea? Or turn left, or can you sign your name here, or whatever. So,
or even just the like, well done, or like a little clap, and it really does make all the difference. It does. Like, I've only done I did like 1 half marathon in like 8 years ago now. I'd never run again in my life. But like, just the people being like, you're doing a good job, like just that little, it really does boost. And so like, and it is an amazing feeling. And
well, a couple of weeks ago we were at the London Marathon. Both Mark and I were at the finish line.
12 runners do we have?
We had to find 12 runners out of 50,000.
That's so good though.
We found them.
It's incredible to see those people that just done that.
And Mark, you said you're a scientist, so how did you go from being a scientist in a lab?
So just done a similar job, sort of from literally in the lab working on test tubes, so cancer immunology, and sort of some writing parts of that. But it was through Rob, actually. We met through cricket. I've played cricket with Rob's son for a number of years, and probably it was a good day that I got out early from batting and was chatting to Rob, and I said, anything I can do against breast cancer? And I was literally saying, do you want some leaflets delivered? Because I'd been made redundant.
There's a theme here, guys.
So working in small biotech, it doesn't always go to plan, and unfortunately a lot of research into promising therapies don't work as planned. A lot fail, unfortunately. So yes, and then it turned out that ABC had a research manager sort of role that needed somebody with a science background, and I would have not guessed it would need and then draw on my experience as much as it has. So when I was seeing that this is what the charity funds, I was just blown away, thinking this is amazing. The research, both Southampton and the wider world, is getting much better to tailor the right treatments for the right kind of patients. Obviously different types of breast cancer, so there's different avenues of research, and not every treatment is going to be right for each patient. And I'm sure you're aware that, and people say react differently. Side effects can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think I have had, so I'm on hormone therapy for the next 8 years still, and I am already on my 3rd drug to try for that because of how horrendous the first 2 have been. The first one rendered me completely immobile. I was in so much pain. I was taking as much codeine as the hospital would physically allow me, and I still couldn't get out of bed. So we tried that for 6 months, and I don't think I've ever been as miserable in my life. And then they were like, well, we can try this drug, and it got marginally better. But then I found myself it was almost like I got like a small taste of what it was like to get my life back. And I was like, no, I'm not okay with a half life. I'm 30, I want a full life. And then they switched me to another drug, which, I mean, I will say has completely changed my life. Like I'm on tamoxifen now, which comes with a higher risk of reoccurrence for me. But the quality of life benefit outweighs, for me, at the moment, that percentage.
Was that your decision?
Yeah, it was my decision. Went from estomestine to letrozole. And even when I was on the letrozole, I managed to come off codeine, but I was still on 8 cocodamol tablets a day. Was having problems with like my hands seizing up, like my bones were so painful to move, and I work at a computer all day, and I couldn't do that. And I remember sitting down with my oncologist and saying, you know, at the time, I'm 31, I have 2 young children, I can't help put them to bed, I can't brush their teeth, I don't have the dexterity in my body anymore, and I'm not okay with that, so find me another option. And we had to have this huge conversation about the compromise to some extent, and how switching to a different drug means that the therapy might not be as successful as being on others. And I think after living in the state I was in for a year and seeing what that was doing to me and my family, it was, well, if I can get back up on my feet and I get to live a great quality of life for however long, if the reoccurrence happens, then we'll deal with that. And if it doesn't happen, then great, I've spent the next 8 years on that medicine, up, about, fit, healthy. So do you think like the research into all those sorts of things is so important, because it is really hard as the patient to get across how miserable your life can be because of one of the drugs you're taking. And even though you know you're taking that to preserve your life, to look after yourself, all that kind of stuff, you do, and I genuinely did reach a point where I probably would have completely sacked off all of my treatment to get my life back. It is so important that like the therapies are looked at as well, and like consistently developed, and not just like, oh, you're on this and therefore you're on that for the next 10 years, because my body's going to change massively over the next 10 years. I'm going to be going from being a 30-year-old woman when I started this to being 40, and I've also been put in medical menopause and all the changes that come with that. And like, so that there's this whole thing of like what's happening in my body doesn't necessarily marry with my natural age, and therefore how do the medications affect those changes and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, I mean, it's huge. I could moan about it forever.
Yeah, we definitely could.
Yeah. I try not to moan about it forever though, but it does, the whole thing is just a slog to get through, and especially when you've got the position we're in where you've still got like 8 years of it ahead of you and only 2 behind. It's definitely a mental thing, I think.
But there are parts of it where, like, obviously we are on a lot of medication, but I think sometimes I do feel quite lucky, I guess. Unlucky that we had cancer, but lucky in the sense that like we do have a lot of this research going on that's going to help us. So I'm actually on a new drug, chemotherapy drug called abemaciclib, which I'm sure you probably know about. I don't know if you had any kind of play in the research side of it, but it was only recently just approved for the NHS, like 2 years ago maybe, and that's when I started taking it. So I feel incredibly lucky to be we're of the age where we can do this kind of research, and we know the things that are going to, like, you know, give you a better survival chance.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it is charities like Against Breast Cancer that we have to thank for these kinds of these research, and, you know, that now I get to take this chemotherapy tablet, which comes with a whole host of side effects. Yeah, it's because of charities like you that I have a higher percentage of survival, and like I feel so incredibly lucky and grateful for you guys and your work. That's, you know, now part of my life. And yeah, I hate having to take pills, but yeah, it's because of work that you guys fund that now I get to, you know, hopefully have a longer life. Yeah.
There's some great organisations out there doing similar things that we do, and we've been looking at a story that was published yesterday by Cancer Research UK, and quite a few charities were actually mentioned in that, so we contributed to it. Breast Cancer Now have contributed, Barts Cancer Institute have contributed to it, and there's that collaboration that a lot of the public don't see, but it does happen, and it's vital. So we all have our part to play. And sometimes it astounds me that a small charity such as this one can have such a big impact. And it's really how you use the money. So we listen to researchers, we listen to patients. I think Mark will tell you that that's actually critical to our approach. Listen to the patient's voice, and it's these lived experiences that really help shape both the impact and basically the importance of our work. So it drives us in the right direction, and it's something we just have to do.
Yeah, 100%.
And actually, the type of drug you're taking, we funded Professor England Hogan up in University of Sheffield in a small project, and she's worked on that type of looking at the research behind that type of drug. Whilst that funding has finished, that work continues, and that when it's a promising seed grant, that grows into a bigger project and with greater potential that then could be funded by larger bodies. So that's fantastic, where we see the research that we fund sort of carry on. Better therapies, as you're painfully aware, are needed with fewer side effects, but also and ultimately good vaccines for a lot of cancers, particularly breast cancer. That's one of the holy grails.
Is there work being done on vaccines or?
Well, there's an awful lot done worldwide, has been done on breast cancer. It is very complicated, and I guess it's a question we might sometimes get is that, well, we got vaccinations against COVID fairly quickly, and they were generally pretty effective, which they were. It's a lot more complicated for most cancers because they're not caused by one single thing.
There's so many variables as well in terms of if it's fed by estrogen or if it's not, or the different receptors and stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it's clear, like HPV is the cause of cancer of the cervix, so there's screening for that, but it's one virus that has a very strong link with that cancer, so it's one thing that causes it, so you can vaccinate against that one thing. Well, actually, several types of HPV, but it's much simpler.
I think because cancer can present so differently, and in some cases it can look or feel, before you've done any of the tests, non-cancerous, it then makes it really, really hard for a one-size-fits-all vaccine in the same way you would have for COVID.
Everyone's lived experience is different. There's no one type of cancer, sadly. But there is good progress. Our researchers at University of Southampton are doing some really novel, highly technical work into finding new ways to do vaccinations for breast cancer. There's still a way to go, as you could probably imagine.
Of course.
There's some interesting trials out there in for certain types of breast cancer that we're watching. Well, I'm watching very carefully with interest. So hopefully there's good progress.
Well, we might just have to come back to talk to you about it if it comes to fruition.
I find the trials so interesting because I actually work at the Churchill Hospital in oncology administration, and I work with Dr. Simon Lord, who is going to be at your conference. So I'm his secretary essentially, so I get to know a little bit about all the trials that are going on, and I find them so fascinating, the early phase stuff. But I think what people maybe don't understand, and myself included, is how long it takes for kind of these treatments and these tests to be available. I mean, it's years and years and years of painful research, and this hasn't quite worked, so back we go again, and it takes an awful long time to kind of get to the stage of being able to offer. And even with early phase trials, you think, I'm really excited about this, but the thing with early phase is it's early for a reason, and we know nothing about it. We don't know the side effects, we don't know how well it's going to work for you. And cancer is such a tricky one and I think this really opened my eyes when I was diagnosed with cancer. I knew nothing about cancer before I was diagnosed. I thought breast cancer was breast cancer. I didn't realise there were so many different, and even you can be estrogen receptor positive, but then within that there's a massive scale. I am only ER ER4 and ER5. You can be ER8, you can be ER0, and it's like the whole thing is baffling, and no wonder it takes so long, and no wonder like these vaccines are so difficult to, produce, and it's just crazy the amount of work that truly goes into finding these, novel pathways and treatments.
Absolutely, yeah.
Outstanding.
I didn't know that. it's what you've just described is something I've never in 15 years I've never come across. So every day is we're learning. Yeah.
But it's so interesting, and it's just such important work that you guys are doing, and we're so grateful to be able to come and chat to you and for you to talk to us about the stuff that you do here. And if people do want to kind of get in touch and share their story, and if they want to donate, how can they do that?
Well, the easiest way to do it is come and find us at the website. So it's againstbreastcancer.org.uk. From there, what you can do is you'll find there is a donate page. There's a plethora of ways you can get involved. So if you want to find out more about our research, you can do so there. If there's something you want to do. Now, running is not for everyone. So you can run a marathon. I did one once, never again. There are loads of different ways. But what we'll do is we'll try and support everybody, however they want to raise money. If you want to do something in your community, then just honestly drop us a line. Somebody will get back to you. We thank everybody who makes a donation. It's that's just something that's been instilled in us from the get-go. And we will try and support you however we can. We're a small team, but we like to think we punch above our weight.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for talking to us.
It's been amazing talking to you. I feel geared up about science, and I don't even like science.
If you want to share your story, we'd love to hear from you. Whether you've had cancer, you know someone that's had cancer, or you just love listening to our voices. Slide into our DMs on Instagram at onelump_or2.
Or email us at onelumportwopod@gmail.com.
See you next week.
Bye!